Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. It's a pleasure to be back with you. We want to get right into the show tonight because it's so crucial for our world. Our world is beset with too many maladies, crises, infirmities, and we need solutions. And we're very lucky that this past week in Washington, D.C., there was a very important event, the International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C. And leaders from all over the globe gathered to discuss moving our world forward into a more peaceful, prosperous, unified, global unity. And we want to understand that religious freedom, which is so vital, has been recognized, and that the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights of 1966 and the UN General Assembly's Declaration on the elimination of all forms of intolerance and discrimination based on religion or belief of 1981, both reinforced religious freedom in international law. And this was a very important moment and move. Why? Because religion brings civilization, morality, and each individual practice, which we're all entitled to believe and express our beliefs, is vital to human beings. Since the beginning of time, man has searched for the reason for life. And so this was a tremendous summit, and we're going to give you some key interviews on very important leaders in Washington, D.C., and we'll begin immediately. Enjoy. So we're here at the International Religious Freedom Summit, and we have a very, very important guest with us, very humble man, and his CV is so long that I really have to ask him to introduce himself before we ask him a few questions. Mr. William Benac, Jr., welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Likewise, and you know what? Please let the viewers know this is a Time for Truth show about your biography. I'll hold this for you.
Okay. Well, I'm a retired finance professional. I retired in 2016 and went on a self-appointed mission to defend religious freedom in the world and around the United States of America.
Very interesting. And now, if it's okay to ask you, you have how many children with your wife?
We have 9 children, 7 girls and 2 boys, and 25 grandchildren.
And having asked him that, I think he definitely qualifies as an expert to give his opinion today. I know, because my wife and I have 4, and we have 2 grandchildren, so we have a little bit of catching up to do with Bill here. But let me ask you a question. What got you into this realm?
The one realm of religious freedom?
Yes.
It was very simple. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's traditional for retired members of our church to do volunteer work as missionaries somewhere in the world. And as my wife and I, were praying and fasting about what we should do with our retired lives, we received a very clear prompting from God, revelation I call it, that we should get involved with religious freedom. And so we wrote a mission call for ourselves, had a big retirement party with our kids, gave them a copy of our mission call, and asked them to hold us accountable for what we wanted to do in life.
Beautiful, very spiritual.
It was a wonderful experience. It was very simple. We knew what we wanted to do. So the day I retired, we went to work.
Very interesting. And you know what? Without getting a lot into it, you're actually an example of something that I want to bring out to the viewers, to give you, the viewers, the benefit of something that he exemplifies. The Surgeon General recently came out with an advisory on what we need to do to stay physically healthy. And it wasn't a different vitamin or a medicine, but it had to do with social collaboration, interaction, and growth. And you mentioned something now, so tell us a little bit about more of this feeling that you received when you started to actually help the world.
Well, of course, what we were trying to do is follow Jesus, who told us that we should love Him, love God, and love our neighbors as ourselves. And loving people is very simple. If we just are willing to take ourselves out of the equation and consider other people's needs and how we can be more like Jesus. So that's where I'm coming from as a Christian. And I know that people of other faiths have exactly the same ideas about getting together, building bridges, becoming friends, trusting one another. And that's where we're coming from with religious freedom, is we're trying to do that same thing in the area of religious freedom and human dignity. We refer to both of those together.
You know, absolutely. It's like growing on the UN principle, right? You're bringing all the nations together, so we realize the amount of potential as human beings that we have. And so here we are at this unbelievable event, this venue, and first of all, what do you think about this entire summit?
Oh, this is wonderful. This brings together people of all faiths from all countries. And over the course of the full week, which includes the National Prayer Breakfast, we have sessions here on what's called the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network on Monday, where we're talking about how Muslims, Jews, and Christians collaborate together. We have meetings all day today and tomorrow on religious freedom on an international scale in the United States and elsewhere. Then on Thursday will be the prayer breakfast in the morning, and in the afternoon I'll be very involved with a session called Religious Freedom in America. And most of these things are sponsored by people of significant accomplishment. Both Ambassadors Brownback and Saperstein are very involved here, as well as Ambassador Hussein, all presidential ambassadors on religious freedom, and many other important and significant people who run organizations dedicated to this around the world. And it's, I don't know how many people are here. A couple thousand people come in.
A lot of people here.
And we're able to get together and get to know one another and figure out how do we collaborate to bring this about.
You know, it's so crucial because in our world, you and I know we've concentrated so much on technological advance, and we have such rapid ability, but the thing that frightens me is the ability that we have in a negative sense. And this summit, to me, needs to exponentially increase because it's a beautiful thing and needs to expand. If you could comment a moment on the ability we have with the technology, unfortunately, of war versus what we're doing here.
Well, I'm very optimistic that what we're doing here is really taking root around the world. I know there are a lot of reasons we can be pessimistic, because religions and even countries that become religious-centric can be greatly at odds with one another. Human beings of all faiths who believe in God and many who don't believe in God can collaborate easily to bring about peace. So we talk about being peace builders, for example. How do we become peace builders? How do we live a virtuous life? How do we love our neighbors? And those are easy items to explain to almost everybody. They're inherent in our, I'll call it our godly DNA, where we believe in this, in most of us, certainly all the Abrahamic children, all those of Jewish, Muslim, and Christian persuasion, and I'm sure many others as well.
Right, sure.
All have this notion that there is a God and that there is a goodness in the world and that we can live a more joyful and restful and peaceful life if we honor one another, if we really care for one another, if we really exercise what the UN put together as a Declaration of Human Rights, and particularly in these paragraphs of the Human Rights Declaration 18, 19, and 20 talk about religious freedom and human dignity for all, everyone, everywhere, all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what really needs to occur. And you know, as an ending to this interview, what message would you like to send? This is a documentary we're putting forward here from this International Religious Freedom Summit. What message would you like to give to those watching this on how they can help this movement and help in your own community?
The message is very simple. Love one another, care for one another, treat one another as family. We are all family. We are children of God. And get beyond your own personal vendettas and understand that really the joy of life comes from us being able to affiliate with one another and with our neighbors, whether that neighborhood is our city, our state, our country, or the world. Get together with our neighbors in a peaceful and loving way. It pays for everybody.
You know, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's an honor to have given you this interview, and it's a pleasure to know that a human being like you and your wife and others exists still on this planet.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the International Religious Freedom Summit here in Washington, D.C. I'm here with Kola Alapinni from Nigeria. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It's good to
Pleasure to have you.
Same here.
Yes. And tell us a little bit about your group.
Okay, I am an international human rights lawyer. I am also the U.S. Secretary of State awardee on international religious freedom for 2023. I'm General Counsel for Foundation for Religious Freedom in Nigeria, where we've been supporting pro bono victims of religious persecution, particularly blasphemy laws, where in one case we had a minor who was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment without legal representation, Omar Farouk Bashir. That's his name. We got him off the hook.
For what reason was he in prison?
For blasphemy. They said some untoward words towards Prophet Muhammad, and
That's it.
that's it. Also, the popular case of Yahya Aminu Sharif, who was also sentenced to death by the same judge, same day, for blasphemy. We overturned the death sentence, my legal team, and I led the legal team. We've done 2 appeals now. We're now at the Supreme Court, where we're challenging the constitutionality of the Sharia law system. We are not opposed to the Sharia law in Nigeria, so far it sticks to what the Constitution prescribes,
Yes.
which is Islamic personal law. If you want to marry 4 wives, you're fine. The Constitution allows you to do that. You're a Muslim. If you pass away, how is my property shared? Succession, wills, just your personal law. The particular brand of Sharia law being practiced in northern Nigeria right now, where you have 12 states have adopted the criminal aspects of the Sharia law, and they just passed it unilaterally, which is not in consonance with the Constitution. It is not in consonance with Nigeria's obligations under international law. We are signatories to the international treaties, African Charter, ICCPR, ICESR, various instruments which we've signed up to. So
International agreements.
yes, so it's in conflict. We cannot, in this day and age, have laws in our statute books in northern Nigeria where you have prescriptions for chopping off people's limbs in the law, or you
In the
northern
regulations.
states. Yes, in the penal codes of northern states,
Oh,
Sharia
my
penal
Lord.
code. So you have stipulations there saying, oh, if you steal, your right hand is going to be chopped off. If you steal again, another limb will be removed. Or if a woman commits adultery, you're going to stone the woman to death or something. Whereas nothing happens to the man, that is discriminatory. And we can't even have such laws. It's a violation of Section 34 of the Nigerian Constitution, the right to dignity. It's an absolute right. There's no qualification.
That's right.
The government cannot infringe on it. So these are the issues which the Supreme Court must determine speedily and quickly, because my client is in prison. I also represent the former religious prisoner of conscience, because he's been released now, Mubarak Bala Muhammad, who he was sentenced. He was in prison for 4 years without a trial. Eventually, when he was arraigned, he decides to plead guilty because his baby was 6 weeks old when he was in prison. It was a new marriage, and he's been away from home for 4 years. He was going bonkers in prison. So he reckoned, okay, the penalty is 2 years. I've already served 4 years in detention without any trial. If I plead guilty, they'll let me go. He was in the shock of his life when he was sentenced to 24 years imprisonment. So after much hue and cry, his former legal team were able to get him off the appeal. On appeal, he was sentenced to, it was reduced to 5 years, and he's been released now. I represent him now, and he was released in August. Early this year, he decides to grant a TV interview to BBC, and ever since, it's been crazy. All mayhem has bust loose, so to speak, because he's now getting death threats online and everything. His identity is known, and you can see where they say calling him kafir, oh, kill him in the name of Islam, etc. So we need to get him out of Nigeria as quickly as possible to safety. So basically, in a nutshell, these are some of the things which we handled.
Oh, unbelievable. Now, what was his supposed crime?
Oh, they said he made some statements on Facebook where he criticized Islam and said he didn't believe in some of the ethos of what the religion was.
I see. Wow.
So they charged him for public incitement.
I see.
Okay. The Section 38 of the Nigerian Constitution gives you a right to have a religion, a right not to have a religion, a right to change your religion. You're free. So he was just exercising his freedom, his beliefs,
his rights,
as constitutionally guaranteed.
That's correct.
But they said, oh, these statements he made, it's capable of causing public incitement. Someone made a complaint, and then he was just abducted and put into prison for 4 years without trial.
It's amazing because it also goes against the UN Declaration of Human Rights of being abducted without a fair trial, without getting rights, freedom of expression.
You're correct.
It's quite amazing. I can understand why you're here, why you travel from Nigeria. What do you feel and what have you found has been your experience being here at the summit?
Oh, this is my 4th time in a row of coming to the summit. I make yearly pilgrimages here, and it's always good to collaborate with our allies and see each other every year and re-strategize, and it's always a refreshing time, and also an opportunity to keep spreading these stories. To some people who are from the West, it's almost unbelievable that some of these things are happening around the world, but they are, not only in Nigeria, in China, and Pakistan also.
Many regions of the world.
Oh yes, yes. So you have this. So it's always a pleasure being here, meeting with allies and re-strategizing and getting the word out.
So we're here in Washington, D.C. at the International Religious Freedom Summit. With all the technology that we have availed to us as human beings, this summit takes priority and precedence because this has to do with humanity and the ability to control properly the technology we have. And we've been interviewing a lot of very interesting people, dignitaries, opinion leaders, and right now we're very lucky to have with us Leray Heyne. And you know, the group, I saw the name of the group and I just gravitated to it because it's really catchy, is Jesus Christ CEOs. Welcome to our show.
Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you decide to start your group?
Well, I was a business owner, and I kind of was running a company unto myself, trying to build a kingdom unto myself. But my business partners were mom and dad, and they had consecrated the company to the Lord before I did, before I joined the company. And so the Lord used that business to reveal himself to me and to draw me into himself. And then when that 18-year season was up, he launched me into ministering to Christian business owners and teaching them what I did wrong and what I learned to do right. And now we have a global ministry for the last 25 years, ministering to Christian business owners, teaching them how to seriously live out their faith unto Christ in business.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing, and you actually sharing, which a lot of times is not done. And I can tell you from my viewpoint is something extremely valuable because you can save them a lot of time, right? You must have had a lot of stories of that, right?
Oh, a lot of stories. So, in fact, we have a TV program called It's Never About the Business, and how the Lord uses the business in ways to reveal himself, to perfect us, to grow us in spiritual maturity, all in the environment of business that has nothing to do with the business, but yet it really does from a faith standpoint.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that. Because as a surgeon of 44 years with my staff, with my interaction with other colleagues of mine, doctor colleagues, you're 100% on it. I've learned so much about spirituality, humanity, and sometimes we get lost in what we're doing.
Yeah.
We don't realize the other side of it. That's much broader, much larger.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a business owner who has been learning to hear the voice of God, and so you could go to Bible studies, you could go to all kinds of different things happening, but the Lord used a sales call, a Monday morning sales call that was a cold call. Never met this future client, and he walks in and he's super laser focused, ex-pro baseball player, so he's super focused, and he has this thought, and he doesn't know that it's Holy Spirit yet, and the thought is, ask about those donuts. There was a box of donuts there, and he's thinking, that is such a stupid random thought. I'm on a mission here to get this new client, and so he ignores it. So he goes in, he makes his presentation, he falls on his face. Just falls on his face. So he circles back around. He says, let me come at this a different way. Falls on his face. The guy says, thank you, very respectful, but no business to be had here today. And so he's walking out, and he sees this box of donuts again, and he hears this voice, ask about the donuts. So he says, I got nothing to lose. So he asks about the donuts. And the guy goes, oh, that's, we have a church Bible study here at the office, and so on. He goes, oh, what church do you go to? And they start having this conversation, and they know each other's pastors, they know each other's churches, and the whole thing. And the guy says, well, now that I know you're a Christian, he goes, sure, I'll have a second meeting with you. And so so the whole process was Holy Spirit was using that sales call to exercise his spiritual abilities and discernment in the marketplace to hear his voice. So that's an aspect of how God is using business in ways that you may not think have anything to do with the business yet. But if God is really leading that company, then we need to be able to hear his voice.
Absolutely.
And so he was being trained in the marketplace, in business, on how to hear Holy Spirit's voice.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
It's so true. A lot of times we get messages that we consider instinct that we ignore.
Yeah.
And it's so true that when you actually go with them, act upon them, the good things happen.
Yeah.
And so here we are at this tremendous summit, and so many people I met from so many different countries. What do you feel about this International Religious Freedom Summit?
The Lord sprung this on me about 3 years ago, and so this is our third year.
Okay.
And last year we brought our TV team, and that was our first time. And so I'm still growing in the understanding. But for us, we are standing in as ambassadors of Jesus Christ and sharing that we want that free exercise of faith in the public squares of business and every nation. So we're here advocating and promoting that so that our faith can live boldly and unapologetically, freely in business, in the public squares of business. And so for that, with the International Religious Freedom Summit, freedom for all, everywhere, all the time.
We're here at the International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C., and we have someone of the utmost character and honor with us. We're very lucky. Ambassador Brownback, thank you for taking the time, sir.
Hey, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's a great honor, and I wanted to get right to it because I know that you spoke and what you said was direct to the point. What do you feel in 2025 needs to come out into our world and part of this International Freedom Summit that we're at today?
That we're in, unfortunately, a growth in the totalitarian moment. You've got more growing totalitarian movements, and one of the keys to pushing back against that is religious freedom. If you'll let people and push, and we in the free world push aggressively for the right of people to direct their own soul, whatever belief they see fit to follow, that can push back against this totalitarian system. We've really got to stand for this freedom of religion and push it.
You know, absolutely. In the morning they played a video of this man who was operated on as an organ donor. What did you think of what's going on with that in the world?
I was stunned when I first heard it. I've interviewed that gentleman.
Oh, you have?
Yeah, I've talked to him, and you're just going, how can people be that barbaric? I mean, you as a surgeon, you're operating on somebody to take their organs against their will to give to somebody else. How do you even fathom that? And yet it does happen in the world, and that's why we were showcasing it. And it was to a religious minority, the Falun Gong in China. It happens also to the Uyghurs in China, but I mean, here's a documented case of this barbarism that's happening by one of the largest, most powerful countries in the world.
Absolutely. Now, here in Washington, D.C., what final statement would you like to put out to all of us watching this video that you would like to see us go? What direction do you think we need to go in?
Yeah, really to push this foundational right. We've seen a decline in human rights around the world over the last 20 years. And I think what we've lost sight of is the basics. And to get it back, if we could just get around and say, okay, we are going to stand for religious freedom for everybody. I don't really care I care what your faith is, but I'm going to stand for your right to determine what that faith will be and how you want to express it peacefully. If we can get around that, we can grow these other human rights. As I mentioned here today, it's the freedom of freedoms. You can build your freedom of assembly, your freedom of speech around if you get people of faith allowed to be able to practice their faith and push back against this government tyranny.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, sir.
So there you have this segment, which will have more others to follow. And I want to leave off with this, that according to the Cambridge University Press, approximately 90% of the world's state constitutions guarantee religious freedom. And that the Religious Freedom Institute noted that in 2019, the human right of religious freedom is advocated by Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, has been promoted by at least 18 countries and 5 international bodies. But more importantly is where we go from here. So as you watch this program, reach out to your leaders, reach out to your local or governing bodies, and to community institutions and organizations. Let's make a world where we all express respect for one another. A world that can fully trust each other is a world which will move forward in peace and harmony. We hope you enjoyed this segment from the International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C., where Time for Truth participated, and we are going to send you some more in the next few episodes of a Time for Truth show. We hope you enjoy it. We thank you for supporting us, and good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet